40 Days of Forgiveness, Day 19, Death of a Loved One. These are affirmations for grief that you might be experienced if you have somebody that you loved that died. There's so much that can be experienced with grief. It is like a mess of emotions. Anger, fear, abandonment, sadness, even joy. These statements barely touch on the surface of what a person can experience. But here, we affirm that the person who loves us and is gone wants us to heal, grow, and be better without them physically present. Yeah, baby back here trying to... Alright. So here we go. The old story is, I will never feel joy again. And the new story is, I'm joyful and grateful for their time in my life. I forgive myself for believing the grief will always be this bad. Here are the statements. Here we get going. Take a breath if you can. I forgive myself for believing I have to hold on to grief to honor the person I loved. I forgive myself for believing this grief is my fault because I loved. I forgive myself for believing the person I loved has to change or come back or I have to be with them before I can relax and be happy. I forgive myself for believing nothing will ever be good again. I forgive myself for believing I'll never be happy again. I forgive myself for holding on to old joy and rejecting new joy. I forgive myself for believing that having joy without this person disrespects their memory. I forgive myself for believing I can't heal from this loss. I forgive myself for anything I did or didn't do before this loss. I forgive myself for when I use this loss as a way to stop from growing and healing. I forgive the person I love for dying. I forgive the person I love for hurting my feelings and leaving when I wasn't ready. I forgive others when they're insensitive about my loss. I give others permission to forgive me when I'm insensitive about their loss. I love and accept myself even when I'm afraid I'll never heal from this grief. I love and accept myself even when I'm afraid I can't handle this. I love and accept myself even when I'm afraid I did everything wrong before the loss. I love and accept myself even when I'm afraid I'll never get another chance. I love and accept myself with this grief. I give myself permission to accept that my loved one wants me to heal. I give myself permission to accept I can relax and be happy knowing my loved one is at peace and desires me to have peace. I give myself permission to accept that we had all the time we needed together. I give myself permission to feel all the grief and sadness and release it from my body, mind, and spirit. Without this grief, I'm free to feel more relaxed and more healed and complete with the person that I love. Without this abandonment, I'm free to feel more secure and safe and confident without them here. Without this grief, I'm free to trust they love me and they want what's best for me. Without this grief, I'm free to let go and grow. So the reflection is, what grief do you need to let go of? What fears do you have about letting go? What would your loved one say to you about letting them go? And which statements were the most difficult and what resonated? With grief, when I'm working with clients, I especially if it's a good relationship, not necessarily a bad relationship, we're experiencing great grief, but the idea that your loved one wants you to be happy and wants you to have a life good beyond, even though you feel like somehow if I don't grieve hard enough, it's going to be disrespectful or it's going to like not honor them as much. And sort of like being able to let that go, because obviously the amount of love, there's never going to be enough grief to like to cover all that love, right? So letting go of that and sort of moving forward knowing they want what's best, or they would want what's best, and you would want the same for them. And then the other one I think is hard but necessary to believe, or try to believe, is that you had all the time you needed with them, because there's no other option, right? When they're gone. So to sort of like give yourself permission to accept, I had all the time and all the love that I needed from them, and the relationship was complete, at least here, depending on what you believe. That's the other sort of important piece, is like, there is completion here, and they didn't need any more, and I didn't need any more, and I can sort of rest, and they can rest in that. It's a process, of course, and there's a lot of different types of grief, but I think for that grief where we've felt so much love, there can be freedom past it. There can be a good life past it. So, on to day 20.